And we begin with this. State lawmakers in Minnesota have apparently had it up to their ears with the destructive and ruinous policies of Governor Tim Walz, and they're now talking about fast-tracking the process for his actual impeachment. Yeah, folks have been saying that for a long time. Get this done and over with. According to one state representative, a guy called Mike Weiner, the governor is currently treading on very thin ice because he's on the verge of starting an actual civil war with our own federal government. He goes on to warn that at this very moment, Walz is right on the edge of sedition if he hasn't already crossed the line. As a result, the lawmaker says that both he and his equally frustrated colleagues are now laser focused on removing the governor from office as soon as possible before he can do any more damage and before even more people get hurt. Furthermore, the state rep points out that following last week's tragic ICE shooting, Walz played his cards and showed his true intentions by virtually admitting that Minnesota was now at war with the Trump administration. He claims that instead of following the rule of law and presuming innocence regarding the deadly shooting, the governor instead opted to play politics, rally alongside his fellow Democrats, and basically instigate more potential violence by calling for additional protests. The lawmaker says that by both opposing the federal government's legitimate immigration efforts and allowing billions of tax dollars to slip through his fingers, Walz is actually a dual threat to his state's welfare. At the very least, both he and his colleagues are urging the governor to step down immediately and save them all the hassle of going through a lengthy impeachment process. In the meantime, the Department of Homeland Security is taking it a step further and demanding that Walz and his Democratic cronies honor federal detainers concerning more than 1,300 criminal illegal aliens who are currently being held in custody in Minnesota jails. They claim that rather than work with the U.S. government at all, Walz and his pals are instead releasing hundreds of criminal illegals back out onto the streets, thus threatening everyone who lives there. Now, for his part, Walz flat out denies those specific accusations, calling them categorically false and saying that his administration honors all federal detainers, including those from ICE. Final thoughts, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Now, here's the deal. In certain circles, it might be considered impolite or perhaps even mildly inflammatory to suggest that on some level, Governor Tim Walz is a feckless leader, corrupt, incompetent, and not acting in the best interest of the state of Minnesota. So you know, the News Roundup, we're not one of those circles. Therefore, we declare that Governor Tim Walz is a feckless leader, corrupt, incompetent, and not acting in the best interest of the state of Minnesota. Pretty basic. Actually, we've been saying that all along, and thousands of our fellow Rounduppers, they've left comments for us right here, essentially saying the exact same thing. Now, the way we see it, Mr. Walz has already admitted that he's the wrong guy for the job by saying he won't be running for a third failed term as Minnesota's governor in the next election, which, by the way, is coming up in November. Next, this train wreck of a state leader should do the right thing right now and simply resign. But because he won't, then Minnesota's last remaining grown-up in the room, that guy, Congressman Mike Weiner, he has the only solution: impeach Tim Walz. Also, before advancing Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan to the post, track down a phone book, one of those big, giant phone books, and with a blindfold on, pick any name at random from that book and give that person the job. At this point, anybody, virtually anybody, could run the state better than Tim Walz or his second in command, the one they call Madam Flanagan.